Hi, it's Katrina. There have been a lot of discoveries made recently, including a new species, an ancient pagan cult, and a UFO sighting that just might turn you into a believer. Let's jump right in. The Rendlesham Forest UFO. There is a UFO parked on the ground in an obscure forest in England. It's there right now, and you can see it for yourself. Deep in the Rendlesham Forest, a quiet and picturesque part of the Suffolk woodland, is the UFO landing site. The spaceship on the ground doesn't actually fly. It's a nifty replica of the mysterious ship that was witnessed in December of 1980. The replica ship marks the exact location where the world's most well-documented and convincing alien sighting took place. If you don't believe in aliens already, you just might by the end of this video. At 3 o'clock in the morning on December 26, 1980, the security patrol near the Royal Air Force's Woodbridge site saw some unusual lights in the sky. The lights slowly descended into the nearby Rendlesham Forest. The lights were so bright and so intense that the security patrol believed an aircraft crashed into the woods. Naturally, the servicemen went into the dark and spooky forest to investigate. What happened next is detailed in the official memo written by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, who was one of the men who went into the forest after seeing the lights. Charles and the other soldiers witnessed an immense glowing object. It was a huge and metallic thing, because thing is really the best word for it. The mysterious object was humming, hovering in the middle of the woodland and flashing multicolored lights. When the soldiers attempted to get closer, it moved effortlessly through the trees as if immune to gravity. What the soldiers saw at night was certainly convincing, but it was what happened the next day that really made them into believers. Well, it was the same day, but early in the morning when the sun came out. The servicemen returned to the small clearing where they had witnessed the unidentified flying object. There, they found burn marks in the trees and broken branches. They also discovered 3 impressions on the ground from where it looked as though something had landed. There was real physical evidence that a spaceship had descended, landed, and then took off through the trees. You thought it was over, but it isn't. On December 28th, Charles Halt returned to the site with several servicemen to take radiation readings. The readings weren't off the chart, but the area surrounding the clearing did have elevated levels of radiation. The servicemen also discovered a second burst of radiation roughly half a mile away. While they were looking for radiation spikes in the woods, they had their second sighting. A mysterious light was seen way off in the distance, very similar to the light seen 2 nights earlier. Then later, Halt found testimony from others who had seen the same lights in the sky. One of the lights supposedly beamed down a stream of concentrated light like a tractor beam before disappearing. The reason this is such a convincing sighting is the physical evidence and the multiple eyewitnesses. However, it could very well have been a hoax. In 2018, British UFO researcher David Clarke claimed the whole thing was staged. He claimed the soldiers rigged colored flares in the woods and used black helium balloons equipped with lights. Nobody knows what truth may really be out there. If it was a hoax, the RAF servicemen went their whole lives without ever admitting it. In 2005, the local forestry commission created a trail through the forest and named it UFO Trail. Then, in 2014, the fake UFO was installed at the end of the trail for tourists to visit. The model UFO is based on sketches that were created at the time of the sighting. It's supposed to be the closest thing to the actual UFO seen by Charles and his servicemen that night in the exact spot. The Pagan Cult. One of the weirdest artifacts ever was recently discovered in the Czech Republic. Archaeologists found a belt buckle from the Middle Ages depicting what looks like a dragon eating a frog. The artifact itself is bizarre, but not nearly as weird as what it means. Researchers think the belt buckle is from an unknown pagan cult. The vicious predator on the buckle is either a dragon or a snake. It's tough to say for sure. It was discovered by a metal detectorist near the small village of Lani near the border of Austria and Slovakia. At first, after the metal detectorist showed his discovery to the pros, they thought it was a totally unique design never before seen. But when they started looking at past discoveries, they found similar designs. Over the last 12 years or so, A handful of nearly identical artifacts have been unearthed in random digs throughout Europe. Each ancient belt buckle has the same design, a draconic monster devouring a frog. Archaeologists believe this symbol was used by a cult active across nearly half of Central Europe. The cult existed in the early Middle Ages in rural areas prior to the arrival of Christianity. Archaeologist Jiří Mačesek from the Masaryk University believes the motif of the serpent is directly connected to a group of mysterious spiritualists. It's crazy because up until now, at the beginning of 2024, nobody had known the spiritualists existed, let alone what to call them. So, as of right now, there is no name for this mystery cult. Experts don't know what they believed in or why they wore these belt buckles. But one thing's for certain, there were way more mysterious cults and magical religious groups in the Middle Ages than previously believed. Ancient Chinese pot. 2,700 years ago in ancient China, there was some serious pot smoking going on. A stash of marijuana was recently uncovered in a tomb in northwest China. The weed has decomposed significantly, so nobody's about to smoke it and see what the effects are. But scientists are still eager to understand why there were 2 pounds of pot in this grave. The weed isn't even the weirdest thing about this discovery. 2 pounds of dried herb was found in a grave at the Yanghai Tombs burial ground in the Gobi Desert. It's currently the oldest known marijuana in the world. The weird part is that the plant was placed next to the head of a shaman who died around the age of just 35. Despite living in the harsh Chinese desert, the shaman had pale white skin and bright blue eyes. Just who in the world was this ancient pothead? Or was he even a pothead at all? Maybe the hemp was used to make clothes. We have to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. But according to Professor Dr. Ethan B. Russo from the Chinese Academy of Sciences, the dead man was definitely smoking it. Somebody picked out all the parts of the plant that weren't worth smoking prior to placing the marijuana in the shaman's grave. They left in the parts that were rich with THC. Whoever put the pot in the grave knew exactly what they were doing. The best guess scientists have right now is that the pot was used for medicinal and recreational purposes. The pale shaman and his people likely smoked it ritually, but maybe habitually as well. Might upset some people, but the harsh truth is that humans have been smoking weed for a very long time. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus described the Scythian warlords of the Eurasian steppes smoking pot 2,500 years ago. The remnants of cannabis have even been found in ancient Egypt, suggesting that Egypt had its share of potheads too. The Parking Lot Tardigrade. A very small, very exciting, and totally random discovery was recently made in a Japanese parking lot. An entirely new species of the world's most indestructible creature was found. A creature so unstoppable that not even a direct hit from a meteorite could destroy it. Scientists agree the 8-legged monster will survive on this planet until the sun dies and the Earth becomes a cold, dead rock. The microscopic animal I'm talking about is the tardigrade. An entirely new species of tardigrade was found crawling around on a clump of moss growing out of the parking lot's concrete. It was found by researcher Kazuhara Arakawa just around the corner from his apartment in Tsuruoka City. Kazuhara didn't stumble upon the micro-animal by accident. The tardigrade is way too small to be seen with the human eye. These creatures, also known as water bears, are about 1/100th of an inch long. Unless you have robot eyes, the only way to see them is under a microscope. Even though the new species is exciting, it's hardly the first one found in Japan. There are 168 known tardigrade species in the land of the rising sun. The critters kind of look like juiced-up caterpillars. They live in just about every global region and are known for being the most resilient life forms ever. They can live for 30 years without food or water, whereas most people barely last more than 6 hours. They can also live in temperatures from 300 degrees below freezing to 300 degrees above freezing. Egyptian hieroglyphs in Australia. In 1975, Australian researcher Alan Dash came across hieroglyphs at the Karyong Archaeological Site. The site is known for its prehistoric graves, originally found in the early part of the 1900s. There are about 300 hieroglyphs spread across the site. It's not unusual for ancient writing and symbols to be found in parts of the world where prehistoric people lived, but usually they are unique to the area. In the case of the Carryong hieroglyphs, they look like they came straight from ancient Egypt. For the last 50 years, experts have debated whether the glyphs are fakes, evidence of Egyptians in Australia, or a really bizarre coincidence. Alan Dash was the first one to take a serious interest in the glyphs. For 5 long years, he continuously visited the site and discovered new hieroglyphs. Then, in 1983, rock conservator David Lambert blew the lid off the whole operation. He came across hieroglyphs that had been cut that very year. It was his opinion that someone was making the glyphs, then coming back later to find them. The blame was pointed straight at Alan Dash. So, the big question: did Alan fake Egyptian hieroglyphs to try and change history? The experts say yes, but it's never been proven one way or the other. There are still many supporters who believe the hieroglyphs were made by ancient Egyptians who sailed to Australia. The Egyptians became shipwrecked and engraved their story on the stones before vanishing into historical obscurity. The carvings include cartouches of the names of Egyptian kings from 4,600 years ago. Kings such as Khufu, who was buried in the Great Pyramid of Giza. There are also images of chickens and dogs, boats and owls. Some have suggested a few of the glyphs look like alien ships, but that's a matter of interpretation. There is also one carving of the Egyptian god Anubis. Technically, the place is still an active archaeological site. Mainstream scientists like Professor Boyo Okinga from Macquarie University have dismissed the carvings as fake. What's your take? Let me know in the comments below. Ancient Egyptian cancer. Archaeologists have found what might just be the oldest evidence of breast cancer in the world. A team of scientists from Spain uncovered the bones of an Egyptian woman who lived in the 6th dynasty, 4,200 years ago. When the team studied her bones, they found evidence of the destructive damage caused by breast cancer. Everybody knows cancer is one of the leading causes of death around the world. But what nobody knows is where cancer started. Who was the first person who got cancer? How did it sneak into the human body? In archaeological records, evidence of the disease is rare. This has led scientists to speculate cancer originated in modern times due to modern lifestyle. But finding evidence of breast cancer from over 4,000 years ago totally destroys that hypothesis. If people were getting cancer in ancient Egypt, obviously it's been around for a very long time. Just a year before the Egyptian woman's bones were uncovered, British researchers identified a different case of ancient breast cancer. They found a woman buried in a tomb in the desert of Sudan, just south of Egypt, from 3,000 years ago. When they analyzed her bones, they also found evidence of cancer. There is a real possibility that breast cancer arose in the Nile Valley of Africa. However, it's important to note that scientists are still working to understand these discoveries. The 2 women are not 100% confirmed as breast cancer victims. That being said, the evidence does point to the emergence of cancer in Egypt during the time of the pyramid builders. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Romeo Joseph and Cam7179 for supporting this channel. Thanks so much for spending time with us. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about strange recent discoveries. The Legendary Pliosaur. A piece of Jurassic Park has just dislodged itself from a cliff on an English beach. The monumental skull of one of the most fearsome creatures that ever lived is currently being hailed as the greatest paleontological discovery in modern memory. It's the skull of a pliosaur, a true terror of the seas 150 million years ago. The single fossil is beyond impressive. The monster's skull is fully intact, measured at 6.5 feet long. The skull of this beast is longer than most people are tall. It was extracted from the cliffs of Dorset in an area known as the Jurassic Coast. The stretch of coastline earned its name because of all the fossils that have been found there. Local paleontologist Steve Etchie says there isn't another specimen anywhere in the world that can match the impressiveness of the new pliosaur skull. This skull is so amazingly preserved that it still has its teeth. 130 teeth decorate the jaws of the skull, each one like a perfectly carved dagger for ripping and tearing. These teeth were designed by Mother Nature herself to kill with a single bite. Each tooth has fine ridges for slicing into flesh. The teeth were able to easily pierce the pliosaur's victim, then extract in an instant. This allowed the pliosaur to bite rapidly. With a mouth 6 feet long, there isn't a person alive today who would stand a chance against a single bite. But just for fun, let's do some bite force comparisons. I'll start with the measly human, who can bite with about 700 newtons of force. Man's best friend, the dog, has a slightly more impressive bite at 1,000 newtons. Moving up to the saltwater crocodile, this reptile chomps down with a bite force of 16,000 newtons. Then there's the pliosaur, with a bite force of almost double the saltwater croc. These ancient marine monstrosities could bite with 33,000 newtons of force. That's only a little bit lower than the 45,000 newtons found between a Tyrannosaurus rex's teeth. If you're wondering what these enormous marine reptiles ate, the answer is pretty much anything. They likely feasted on their own cousins, the plesiosaur, and they most likely made a meal out of ichthyosaurs, which were like vicious prehistoric dolphins with jagged teeth. The pliosaur was a top predator that would have had no shortage of food options. Small brains. In 2013, brilliant scientist Lee Berger sent cave explorers into a vast underground system in South Africa. What the explorers would discover inside the dark caverns would change human history. It's been 10 years, and scientists are still trying to put together the pieces of the incredible fossils discovered down in that dark place. The cave explorers happened upon fossilized human remains, but not remains of Homo sapiens. These belong to Homo naledi, an entirely new species of human relative. Homo naledi lived a few 100,000 years ago, right around the time Homo sapiens appeared on the scene. Homo naledi were far older than us, having already been thriving when Homo sapiens arrived in Africa from their mysterious place of origin. Although the discovery was made in 2013, it took 2 years for it to be announced. And now that it's 2024, scientists are still puzzling over where Homo naledi fits into the evolutionary tree of humanity. According to Lee Berger, the man who has been working with the bones for a decade, scientists have no idea. But get this. Homo naledi may have been just as smart as humans, even though they had smaller brains. When the discovery was announced, scientists controversially said they believed Homo naledi were ceremoniously disposing of their dead inside the cave system. This would suggest very sophisticated thought processes, which is surprising because Homo naledi should be, theoretically, more primitive than us. Then in 2018, scientists found holes dug into the ground with bodies shoved inside of them in the fetal position. These were human tombs, real tombs, from around 300,000 years ago. But the discoveries didn't stop there. Just recently, in 2022, scientists made the biggest breakthrough yet. They discovered engravings etched into the walls of the cave above the graves. These ancient hominids with their tiny brains were drawing symbols above the graves. This might be the most important anthropological discovery in human history. In the past 2 years, scientists have pretty closely confirmed that Homo naledi was wildly intelligent. They buried their dead, and they wrote what almost looked like names above the graves. What else did they do? Did they have religion? Was there a social hierarchy? Were they the real intelligent beings? Did Homo naledi find themselves on the wrong side of the brutal Homo sapiens who were more violent but not as intelligent? So many questions. The woolly dogs. On Canada's west coast in the 1950s, you could still hear Native American tales of the fluffy white dogs that used to roam freely across the Pacific Northwest. These woolly white mutts were prized for their gorgeous fur. The Stolo Nation used to weave their fur into blankets for tribal leaders. But even in the 1950s, it had been over a century since any Coast Salish person had seen a woolly dog, either dead or alive. People outside the tribe started assuming the woolly dogs never existed at all. Western scholars believed they were about as real as Bigfoot. Those scholars are certainly feeling silly now. A new discovery has proven that woolly dogs were very, very real. A team of researchers pinpointed woolly dog DNA on a 150-year-old dog pelt. The genetic data confirmed the legends of the beautiful white dogs to be true. The DNA showed a distinct set of genes which contributed to the dog's curly pale undercoat. It's a classic example of Western scientists dismissing the oral traditions of indigenous populations only to be proven wrong by their own scientific methods. Even though countless Coast Salish people across the Pacific Northwest told stories of the white dogs raised for their wool, scientists doubted them. But now that the dogs are confirmed to have been real, what happened to them? The woolly dogs vanished at some point in the 19th century. Researchers suspect their disappearance coincided with the sudden arrival of hordes of European settlers. The dogs slowly disappeared until they faded away. As for their origin, they were likely from North America. These adorable hounds most likely would have thrived during the Ice Age with other woolly beasts, like the mammoth. Liquid gold. At the end of 2023, an incredibly valuable haul of rare material was found in a place most people wouldn't look. A whale washed up on the beach in Spain's La Palma, one of the Canary Islands. Inside the body of the whale was liquid gold. Not actual gold, but just as valuable. Antonio Fernandez Rodriguez is the head of the Institute of Animal Health and Food Security. He visited the beached whale to investigate the situation. While Antonio was looking inside the digestive tract of the humongous animal, he found a lump. It was a lump of ambergris that was 20 pounds. The lump was so big that Antonio believes it caused a blockage in the whale's digestive system. Humans refer to ambergris as floating gold because of how much money it's worth. It might be precious to us, but it proved deadly to the unfortunate whale. Just what is ambergris anyway? It's made of a whale's secretions. I guess that's the least disgusting way to describe it. When a whale eats something like a squid or cuttlefish and the squid's beak gets stuck in its intestinal tracts, ambergris hardens around it. This is what causes a lump to form inside the digestive tract, eventually killing the whale. The rare material is totally disgusting, but somehow manages to have a desirable smell. It also contains an odorless chemical known as ambrane, which can boost a fragrance and make perfumes last longer. It's a seriously coveted item for perfume makers. The chunk of liquid gold found by Antonio is worth roughly $540,000. If you're lucky enough to find a chunk of ambergris in the US, don't get too excited. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, ambergris comes from an endangered marine mammal. This means it is illegal to collect, keep, or sell ambergris in the United States of America. The copper crown. In a remote Indian village, archaeologists discovered a crown that once sat atop the head of a king. The crown is made of copper and dates back 4,000 years. It might be one of the most important artifacts ever found that's connected to the mighty Indus Valley civilization. When you see historical media like movies about medieval Britain or some faraway land in prehistory, the rulers are always wearing crowns. But in reality, very few shiny pieces of royal headgear have ever been uncovered by professional archaeologists. According to Dr. Rakesh Tiwari with the Archaeological Survey of India, this is only the second time a crown has been found at an Indus Valley site. At a totally different site in northeast India, there was a silver crown discovered, but that was a very long time ago. In the entire history of the Indus Valley civilization, also known as the Harappan civilization, there must have been thousands of crowns. These people dominated India as the premier civilization for nearly 1,000 years. They were founded in 2600 BC, give or take a decade. They continued to thrive as a wildly advanced society until they disappeared mysteriously in 1900 BC. The Indus Valley was considered on par with other great civilizations like China, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. Did all the rulers of the civilization wear a crown on top of their head? Honestly, nobody knows. The remnants of the copper crown are in terrible shape. They were dug from the dirt of a rural village called Chandayan in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Archaeologists think it belonged to someone of importance, but there's no real way to know. Along with the crown, a random pelvic bone was discovered, and what may have been a sacrificed animal. The stolen painting. In the 1950s and 60s, the manager at the Arnott Gallery, Louis Edelman, was busy conducting one of the greatest heists in art history. At the New York City Gallery, Lewis was slowly but surely selling important works of art behind his employer's back. He got away with selling several thousand pieces of artwork for a little over $1 million. I say he got away with it, but only for a while. The FBI ended up arresting Edelman in Chicago, where he was convicted of transporting stolen art. In the years since Edelman's thievery, the stolen works that he sold have popped up here and there around the globe. One of them was just discovered 3,000 miles away from where it was stolen. A painting by French post-impressionist Edouard Léon Court turned up in Lancashire in the UK. It was sold 6 decades ago and has been in limbo ever since. The picture is called Flower Market Madeleine, a spectacular painting of a flower market. It was something of a miracle that the picture turned up at a public auction. Those who recognized it got in touch with the Arnott Gallery and sent it back for free. But most of the paintings that were stolen in the 50s and 60s are still missing. Edelman himself was only given a 2-year sentence for the art heist and a measly fine of $10,000, despite the fact he made over $1 million from the thefts. Mystery of Stonehenge. A shocking new discovery has changed everything you thought you knew about Stonehenge. However, the discovery has also helped raise more questions than answers. England's most famous stone circle is still a baffling enigma. The discovery has to do with the altar stone. It's one of the most important monoliths at Stonehenge, also called Stone 80. It is the biggest of all the blue stones that form the innermost circle at Stonehenge. It's about 16 feet long, lying awkwardly on the ground where it has fallen. It looks like an altar because it's lying sideways, but it's believed the stone was upright to begin with. Its original purpose, 5,000 years ago, is unknown. The greatest mystery of Stonehenge isn't that the stone circle was built by primitive people. Even Stone Age humans had the ingenuity to erect heavy rocks and organize them in a circle. No, the mystery is that scientists say the stones were transported 140 miles from a quarry in Wales to Stonehenge. The ancient builders didn't carve the stones out nearby and then bring them to the site. They dragged them from one country to another over hills and rocky terrain. I'm talking about stones that weigh 6 tons. To this day, not even the greatest scientists have figured out a reliable method for how the ancient people did this. But now, things are even more mysterious. A team of researchers led by Richard Bevins at Aberystwyth University in Wales discovered a previously unknown secret about the altar stone. It does not match with the other blue stones that were quarried in Wales. It doesn't have the right characteristics, meaning it wasn't dragged 140 miles with the rest of the rocks. This revelation was made after over 10 years of research. Richard began examining samples of the altar stone in 2009. He and his team have used all the most modern analytical techniques, things like automated scanning electron microscopy and UPB zircon age determination. The results of all the tests prove the altar stone came from a different place than all the other stones at the henge. So, where did it come from? And why was the biggest stone at Stonehenge taken from a different quarry? Researchers believe it arrived at Stonehenge in 2950 BC, in the first stage of construction. But what it was used for and where it came from is still under investigation. Do you have any theories? Let me know in the comments below. And hit subscribe if you haven't already. Hunting for dark matter. Completely by accident, astronomers have made a weird discovery in space. They found the very first intergalactic trail of stars. Researchers are calling it a stellar stream, the first of its kind ever seen through a telescope. The stream of stars, flowing like a cosmic river through the universe, is about 10 times longer than the Milky Way. But what in the world is it? A stellar stream is an elongated thread of gravity. Imagine a long flow of gravity moving through the universe, pulling nearby galaxies and stars into itself. This particular stellar stream is made up of stars that were most likely ripped away from their galaxies by the intense gravitational pull. They wound up stuck in the same gravitational river like broken branches caught in a slowly moving stream. But the stream is only part of the discovery. Scientists at the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands were looking for evidence of dark matter when they came across the trail of stars. They were searching in the Coma cluster, a small group of about 1,000 galaxies, 321 million light-years from Earth. That was when they spotted the starry trail, which they have since named the Giant Coma Stream. Right now, researchers don't know how stellar streams work, but there are speculations that it could have something to do with dark matter. The team of stargazers think dark matter could be somehow stretching the stream into its elongated shape, thereby trapping stray stars in its gravitational pull like flies in a cosmic web. The deadly Hercules spider. Speaking of flies and webs, the largest specimen of the most venomous spider on the planet was just discovered. It's the worst of both worlds. It's venomous enough to kill with a single bite. It's also big enough to give anyone who sees it an abrupt heart attack. And yes, as you have already anticipated, the spider was discovered in Australia, land of the creepiest crawlies and the most venomous creatures. His name is Hercules, and he's about the size of an Olympic gold medal. He was named Hercules by the people who found him simply because of his ridiculous bulk. He's a very big boy, covered in bristly little hairs and packed to the gills with toxins. Hercules is a funnel web spider, and to be perfectly honest, he isn't that big compared to other spiders like the Brazilian wandering spider that can grow to be the size of a dinner plate. He's only 3.1 inches long, though for a funnel web spider, that is humongous. The arachnid was found 50 miles north of Sydney and taken to a hospital. The hospital then turned the spider over to the Australian Reptile Park. The Reptile Park is home to a venom milking program. Because male funnel web spiders only live about a year in the wild, the milking program is in constant need of new specimens. They milk the spiders to collect venom that is used in life-saving antivenoms. The public is aware of this, so they often donate the venomous little creatures when they come across them. It just so happened that this time, the donated spider was the biggest one ever seen. It's also important to note that female spiders don't contain the special neurotoxin that makes the males so deadly. Only male spiders have the ability to cause human deaths, and they can cause them. Male spider venom contains a unique concoction of toxins that attack the nervous system. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!